All right, everybody, welcome to Unscripted. And this is pretty cool. I'm not going to lie. Welcome to my Unscripted studios from the Junction in Old Hilliard, Corby. Thank you for the audio intro as always. This is a first. And honestly, the first magic trick was going to be to try to do this live. And that didn't happen because I'm just a hot mess, as you all know. So that didn't happen. But I'm really excited. Today, I have an actual magician on the podcast. So we're going to see how this goes. We got the video going. That'll go up on YouTube, but we have the audio. And so this is going to be fun. Let my guest introduce himself. We'll roll from there.
Yeah, so my name's Danny Ray. I'm an illusionist in travel the country, sharing God's transforming message through captivating illusions. And recently I wrote a book called No, I Can't Make Your Wife Disappear. And it's all about marriage and relationships. And so I'm excited to be on the show today and see what Unscripted has and what happens with this conversation.
Well, as I said, it's a hot mess, so this may be a hot mess. But let's just start with the title because I love it. They sent me the book. You were kind of sent me the book. My weekend was completely lost. It was a train wreck, as always. But I haven't got a chance to actually read the book, and I can't wait. I really can't. I'm actually taking a trip to Florida this weekend, and this is going to be a part of that trip. I can't wait to open this book. The title is "I Can't Make Your Wife Disappear." Let's start with the title because that may lead into other stuff, but let's just start with the title. Where did that come from? That is hysterical.
Yeah, so after a show, oftentimes men, never women, will come up and say, "Can you make my wife disappear?" And I usually let them know that I have a better offer on the table. Your wife already came to me. It's, a higher price than you would expect. So, but yeah, so that's where that came out of people thinking I'm hearing it for the first time. But it's a pretty common question that I'll get after the show. And so when my wife and I celebrated 25 years recently in June, and one of our goals, thanks, man. One of our goals was to put a book out to help married couples. We've had a lot of help along the way. We've needed it. And
right.
So, different pastors and speakers and books we've read and conferences we've been to, we thought, how do we put that into a book format to really encourage, inspire, and help some other marriages along?
Well, and I think I just want to make sure in case anybody is, still listening and didn't click next on the podcast or went on to the next one that they have saved. The title is not misleading, but so you wrote this with your wife. So you got to open the book and read it because at the end of the day, you did write this with your wife. And as you said, 25 years, that's a huge accomplishment. Congratulations. Honestly, I know how hard that is. I think we're coming up on that anniversary soon. That's not easy. There's a lot of complications and things. So to be able to sit down and not only talk about your marriage, but write it with your wife, she was a part of the book, right? I mean, she was a part of this process.
So because of the title, we wrote it from my perspective. When you're talking about disappearing, my wife's, not a part of the show, right? So we wrote it from my perspective, but in every chapter, there's a Kimberly's corner, my wife, Kimberly.
Right.
And so it has her perspective. And so that's part of every chapter. And so but really every page, she helped breathe life into all of that and really help shape some of those stories and make sure that the message connects with both, husbands and wives.
And I'm probably giving away a little bit here. This is probably something a magician shouldn't normally do, and I'm not a magician, so I can do it. November 8th is when we're recording this. When does the book release?
November 16th.
November 16th. So we're just about a week away from release. I want to get this out of the way right away, and then we'll do it again, eventually. But how can people find the book if they're listening right now and they don't want to listen anymore, but they just want to go get the book? How do they find it?
You can find it at any bookstore. Amazon right now is probably the main way, but eventually it'll be in Christian bookstores around the country, Barnes & Noble, all those type of things. Yeah.
Awesome. And we'll give all the links at some point here, probably towards the end. But so the book is out and will be out very soon. So let's reverse the tape a little bit. Let's go back to your story. What is the Danny Ray story? Like, when did magic? I have a million questions. So I'll let you start, and then I'll just cross off questions as they go. What is the Danny Ray story?
I'll give you some of that story. Feel free to interrupt, and if you want more details or whatever. So 10 years old. Well, I'll back up even before that. I think part of my story is the story of two fathers, one that abandoned me at 4 or 5 years old, and one that came into the picture around 5 or 6 years old. And that's my dad, but my biological father, the absence of a dad, but by far hurt me more than any other person without ever saying a word. Like that absence, there was a longing to be with that just wasn't going to be. And when I would ask my mom, like, where is he? She'd say, probably off with some other woman or off in jail, which I'd find out later on, that he was a womanizer, a compulsive gambler, different things. And when I was 14, I didn't know this until I was 18, but he went to prison for, some pretty horrendous crimes. And I would find that out at 18. It was devastating, but backing up to 10 years old, which was where I was going to start with the magic side of it. So I started doing magic when I was 10 years old, and at 12 years old, did my first show called Razzle Dazzle. I know, impressive. So I sold tickets for $0.25 and had 75 people show up. I was the richest kid in town.
Right.
15 years old, I started working at a restaurant in San Diego called The Gathering. That led to like local business shows. But at 17 years old, I gave my life to Christ, and that changed everything. And I started to read the Bible for the first time and read a passage that said magicians are going to hell. Well, I'm like, okay, I need to stop doing this, and thankfully I had some youth pastors and some leaders that were like, no, the magicians in the Bible are dealing with like sorcery and witch, calling up the dead, not like card tricks.
Right.
Very different things.
Making two rings come apart.
Yeah, exactly. That's not what they were doing.
Right.
So thankfully, I kept the craft up and kept working on it. But it's when I became a youth pastor, well, in 19, started working with in youth ministry, and that led to just really investing in students. And for 5 years, I invested in students, went to seminary, and then became the youth pastor. But really, probably at 27, 28 years old, somewhere in there, started praying through Romans 11:29. It says God's gifts and his calling are irrevocable. And it was the first time I really, I'd read it before, but it really just hit home. Like I have my calling to preach, to share God's word with people, to share God's love with people. And this gifting he's given me, we're in two separate worlds. And so that began the pursuit of how do I really blend those together to be right where God's designed me to be. So that's a little bit of the story.
And you have your master's of divinity, correct?
Yes.
And so that's amazing. So that was one of the questions I had. So I know, and we won't say him by name. There's a street magician in New York that's very, very popular. Most people probably know who that is. He does a lot of TV series and things like that. There's one in, I think, Vegas, maybe another one. But they've also been linked to darkness. Just, for fairness. I don't know. I don't have a clue what I'm talking about right now, but I know a lot of people talk about, hey, magic and darkness, as you said, even in scripture. So I'm glad you clarified that from the beginning, because I think a lot of us read that. And I'd even be interested to know what the Hebrew version of the word magic means, because it probably means something like you said, I think it probably means something completely different. But how do you, with the background that you have, how do you go into this? There's, at the end of the day, it's magic is the fact that we don't understand it, and anybody watching it does not get it. There's that's the beauty of it, is how did they do that? That's amazing. So I think a lot of people start to go to, well, that's got to be some kind of witchcraft or something like that. So how do you step into that world and just make it, and still preach the message that you have? That's really interesting to me.
Yeah. So first, like what's great with the two people you mentioned is they've really helped create buzz in the culture around sleight of hand. Right. And then you have other shows that America's Got Talent, Penn and Teller Fool Us, that have really made close-up illusions, close-up magic, what I do, really popular. And so I think that's really helped to take the craft that I love and that by God's grace, I'm really good at, and be able to use that as a springboard to create conversations built around faith. And I think it's like any missionaries, you have to start with where they are.
Right.
And right now in our culture, people love sleight of hand, love magic. And so to be able to do that and then figure out ways of intertwining that message, because I'm always looking for who's that person in the back of the room that, is just like arms folded. They're like, oh, this magic's pretty good, but I don't want to hear the message. I want to try to figure out how can I connect with them and love on them and speak into their life, not just the ones who, go to church and they're going to hear 1,000 messages. So
yeah, that's a great answer. I was at a concert last night. I was just thinking as you were talking. I was at a concert last night, a quote unquote air quotes, if you're not watching, air quotes Christian concert. Right? And there's an entire industry that's been made of music. And at the end of the day, music it's not all the devil. If you play all the albums backwards, they don't, whatever people believe about stuff, right? I mean, you put it out there and people are going to make whatever they want. But at the end of the day, there's an entire industry that's been created, and people were worshiping last night. People were weeping last night, possibly even myself at this concert, being moved by the very same thing, which is music. That some people would say is from the devil, and it's and look, that's out there. I mean, we could probably all agree that those things probably exist, but it doesn't mean that it's just a broad brush that covers them all. And is that fair to say about magic as well?
Yeah, so like even the guys you've said, like, oh, these guys are dark. I know we didn't mention names,
Right.
or any other magician that's on TV that we might go, oh, because we don't understand it, therefore it's dark. But then you could also look at people that I'm pretty sure most of your listeners would agree, like a Rick Warren, Greg Laurie, Francis Chan, Louis Giglio. Like I'm trying to give a span of people. Sure. But show up at their events, and there's people out there going, "You're evil." These people are preaching, a false gospel. And I think anytime you gain fame or popularity, there's always going to be the negative side of that as well. Right. And I think we need to be slow to jump to conclusions of like, because we don't understand something, therefore it's dark or it's evil or it's demonic. Is that really true of that person's character and that person's either belief system or what's going on inside of them? And those are the questions I think we have to wrestle with, not just because we don't understand, we jump to a conclusion. And that's with anything, but it happens a lot with magic or sleight of hand.
And I appreciate you spending time on that. We don't have to, continue to spend a lot of time on it, but I knew that that's the elephant in the room. So we identify it. Let's let him out or make him disappear, or however you want to do that. You might be able to do that. But all right. So we've covered that. I just think, but it is a question that comes up. So you mentioned sleight of hand. Have you always been very hand-eye coordinated, or when did you realize, okay, because again, I don't have the clue. I don't have a clue. I can't do a single magic trick. I think I can make my finger, make it look like my finger got cut off, because with the whole, when my kids were young, I used to impress them at the dinner table with that. I think I saw it on YouTube, but that's about the extent of my illusions. So when did you realize, like, I'm really good at this, like I'm gifted at this?
So there's a couple answers to that question. I'll take like a Michael Jordan or anybody that we would know, like in the sports world, right? That, there's a point where you understand you enjoy something, but you really have to work at it.
Right.
And so even though he might have a natural affinity for the game, or I might have, like I really enjoyed working on sleight of hand as a kid, but had I not worked on it, I wouldn't be able to have that gift come to expression. And so I think it's a both and. We have to have a natural desire, which I think it's interesting to me when we look at where do desires come from. And I believe that God puts those desires in us. So I'll give you an example of, I was at a camp, and this was part of what led to doing this ministry. Is every day I'd walk by this stack of wood and I would hear men talk about, like, man, I just can't wait to build the house on Thursday. Like on Thursday, why can't we build it today? Right. And I just remember thinking, like, I'm fine not building it. I'm fine building it on Thursday. I'm fine if they say, let's build it today, because they know it's a good thing. Right, but it wasn't out of desire. It was more out of like, that's a good thing to do. And those are two different things. But why do I desire to sit down for hundreds, thousands of hours working on like a shuffle or a technique that nobody will ever see because it'll be invisible? And those are the things that fascinate me. And you could talk about engineers or, English majors or whatever, and people find different things fascinating. And I think it comes back to the desires that God puts into us.
Mhm.
We work hard to bring those to expression.
I agree 100%, because I've always said, like, people will say, we always talk about spiritual gifts. And one of the things people say is, well, I don't know what my spiritual gift is. And I always tell them, what are you good at? Like, what's that thing that you wake up, and people have heard this on other podcasts because I've said it before. And I'm 50 plus and just now realizing, like, if people keep saying, hey, you're really good at that, you should probably run, at least run it. Let us run this course. Find out what you're talking about. So were people like, you're really good at this? And I have two other questions I can't wait to ask you. But did you find early on that people were like, you're really good at this, you should pursue this? Or did you just personally, like, was there a moment, was there a shift, was there a aha moment that said, okay, I need to, because you've done a lot with ministry. Was there an aha moment for you that you said, okay, I actually need to really, you just talked about it, spend time on my craft. Was there an aha moment for you, or was it just general and gradual?
Yeah, no, there was definitely, I would say, a couple of aha moments. When I was 18, I was performing, met a world-renowned magician, and he offered to take me on the road with him. We would tour starting in Vegas, New York, Europe. I was excited about this opportunity. I was in college at the time. And he said, we're leaving in 2 weeks. If you want to go, here's my number, call me. And the difference is 17 years old, gave my life to Christ. So I went back to my dorm, prayed about it, and felt like God's telling me no. And this was like my dream. This was, like everything.
Right.
This guy asked me to do this was huge for me.
Right.
But I called him up and just said, it's not going to work out. I'm sorry, I can't do it. Well, fast forward 10 years as I'm praying through Romans 11:29 with the gifts and the calling and figuring out the desires that God's put in me and where this falls. I'm at the gym on a stair. I will just say a machine.
That's
Sounds
fine.
better.
That's fine.
And there's this magazine that's on this machine, and it says, it was like Newsweek or something like that. It's not something I normally read, but I think God was orchestrating this moment, because 10 years later, I'm flipping through this magazine. I see this magician, and he was up for all of these fraudulent charges for taking college students around the world. He would ask to use their visas, rack up their visas. As soon as they ran out of money, he would leave them stranded.
Same guy.
Same guy.
Same
Yeah.
guy. Wow.
And so God was literally protecting me at 18. And had I not listened to his voice, guaranteed, like, that would have happened to me,
Wow.
And I just, when you talk about aha moments, that's one of those things that, when I was 28 years old, like praying through starting this ministry, it was God going like, look, I've been preparing you for this. All the different shows that you've done for people, around the country, around the world at that point, even though it was real limited still, it was like God was showing me, like, this is the time.
Yeah.
Had I not invested 10 years of my life in youth ministry in the local church, doing it, for thousands and audiences, I think I would have been that guy. And I know Mercy Me, I know you just met with them. They're not, where you just get on a stage and you run back to your trailer, your bus, and you get back and you're like, see ya. I was very invested in students. And so I look at what I do on stage is like 25% of what I do happens on stage.
Yeah.
And there's some that happens before and a lot that happens after of those conversations. And that, to me, that's what it's about. Not, hey, look at me on stage and now I'm out of here, but I want to create relationships. So.
And your trailer video is amazing, by the way. It really is engaging. So whoever, if you put that together, or whoever your team is put that together, it's amazing. It's very engaging. It draws me and it makes me very curious about what you do. So, all right, here's the two questions I had for you, and they kind of piggyback off what you just talked about. You talked about sleight of hand and athletes. So with sleight of hand, and then there's a 1A to this. So this is question one, and then there's 1A. with sleight of hand, how do you, every athlete has to get up 400 shots a day, or run drills, or work on their speed, or, hitters have to get in the cage. Every athlete prepares for their season, and there's no off season, quite frankly. I mean, they may take a couple weeks off. As a magician, I assume you do the same. You talked about hours perfecting, sleight of hand, things like that. Is that true to say, like, what's your day like? What's your week like? What's your month like as a person in this field? What does that look like for you? Because I assume you have to constantly stay sharp.
Yeah, 100% is, even literally before we're on, I'm going through a couple different moves, things I've literally done thousands and thousands of times. It doesn't matter. I'm like, okay, let's do this. Let me try this. Okay. And I have routines that I do, but there's things that I always want to keep fresh. And so there's moves that I'll constantly work on, whether that's on an airplane, whether that's in between two interviews. Is there, like you said, there's no downtime.
Mhm.
Every day I have to stay sharp. And then by God's grace, I'm performing a lot again. In 2019, we did 172 shows. In 2020, we probably had 100 cancel, and
Right.
and so I had to get back to the basics of, like, hey, even when I'm not performing as much, I need to keep the craft up and develop new stuff. And I'm always trying to push myself. I hope in 10 years, my show today, that people are like, that's crazy. They're going like, he's so much better. Like, I think that's the difference with an athlete, is as you do hit kind of a peak, maybe in your 30s, there's exceptions to that. But I think with sleight of hand, with magic, as a speaker, podcaster, you go into your 70s, 80s, and just be just as figuring out ways of phrasing things or putting things together. You might slow down at a certain point, but some of my heroes literally lived into their 90s. One guy, when I finally was able to get in touch with him, he picked up the phone. He's like, Danny, I don't have much time. I have 2 shows today. He was 93. I was like, yes. And he's like, and I just created something brand new. And I've been working on it for the last 6 months. If I don't do it today, I'm going to throw it away. He's like, what's your address? He's like, I built 2 of them, and he sent it to me. And I was like, that's the type of man I want to be in my 90s, is still investing in people well, and still working and creating and developing, and not just going like, all right, I'm going to go sit on the beach for, the next 10 years. But
that's awesome. All right. So question 1A. So that was one. Question 1A is, you have your Master's of Divinity. You're a faith-based magician. How do you keep your faith side sharp? We talked about sleight of hand and the things that you just talked about. So I assume you also work on your faith side, so that those are both equally important, because I think they're equally a part of your show, correct?
Yeah. So it's weird talking about faith, because sometimes it feels not weird talking about faith, but when you talk about like personal stuff, it sometimes feels like, oh, look at what I do.
Right.
At 17 years old, when I became a believer, and I was reading through the scriptures and had a discipleship group, and was just trying to devour like God's word and really understand his purposes, his plans, his character. But when I read Mark 1:35, and it said Jesus got up early to pray, or went to a solitary place and prayed, and the disciples are looking for him, I was like, well, if Jesus did it early, let me start. And so for decades now, I've been getting up at 4:00, and I'll take an hour or 2 to just pray, read God's word, and really let that time, especially when I had kids, that time became crucial, because there was no other silent time in my day, that time to just be still and know that he's God. And so that's just part of who I am, and I'm not out here trying to say like, if you don't get up early, if you don't, like, I'm just saying this is part of how, when you ask how I keep my faith, and I'll take it as strong, keep my faith strong, it's by carving out time to be with him. And when I'm on the road, there's definitely times I miss days. When I'm home, it's easier to keep a regimen and go like, this is, But those are things that I really value, is that time in the morning with God. And so I carve that out to get to know him better, to see what he wants me to do that day. I mean, for years, I don't know what to do with the journals. I literally have probably 1,000+ journals I started keeping when I was 17, boxes of them now. I'm just like, store them. But almost every day I'll ask questions like, how am I growing? God, what do you want me to do today? And those help set the tone for the day.
And I think for me, again, I don't know where this podcast lands. I always say that typically in most interviews, I don't know where it lands, and I'm not in charge of that. What I'm in charge of is the inputs, and God controls the outcome. And so whoever needed to hear that today, I really believe probably somebody's listening to this. Hopefully somebody's listening to this and says, I need to get I need to get back to the word. I need to work on that muscle, my faith muscle, so to speak. And it sounds like that's a great way that you utilize that. Is, for you, it's 5 a.m. So maybe 9 p.m. at night. I don't think any of us are telling people how exactly they have to live, but do it. Like do something.
My challenge for somebody out there that is like, man, I miss those times with God, is to start small. Is my challenge would be 7 minutes, is figure out where's 7 minutes in your day where you could really carve out space just to be and hear from God and get into his word. And over time, organically, things grow and you'll want more time and you'll figure out how to carve more time.
You mentioned this, you've been all over the world. You've been literally all over the world. You've met with, do you even have any idea how many number of people you've stood in front of as a massive audience total?
Live, I don't have like an exact by any means, but live I know would be in the millions, and then
Millions
and stuff. It changes every year, but we're like year 18 or 19 into this, and somewhere around 50,000 a year, sometimes more, sometimes less. And then with we haven't done like a ton of television stuff, but we've done a few things over the years, and those things are aired to a larger audience.
Amazing. And I know you've got another interview, and we had a time change thing that was probably more my fault than anybody's, because it was unscripted. But all right, so I do want to ask you, when you how I'm trying to think how to frame the question. All right, we'll move on to something else. The book, because I still have to figure out how to frame that question. Because and I think we're going to touch on some magic here at the end, but with a video. I think we're going to try something possibly. All right. All right. So the book, because I do want to get back to the book, because really that's the most pressing thing that we can talk about right now is the book. So the book itself, what could people expect if I go out and get a copy of this? What am I specifically getting myself into? Is it all about marriage? I mean, I know that the title is what it is. Is it all about marriage, or is it what am I getting myself into if I were the book?
Yeah, so what I try to do is take magic principles, the secrets of a magician, and then take biblical principles and figure out where those overlap. So it starts, chapter 1 is on misdirection. And most people think misdirection is like, if I'm doing something here, is fake left, go right, is hide what you're doing with the other hand. And if you really saw what a magician is doing, it's going to take away from what's real. The astonishment, what you feel that way is real. Obviously it's sleight of hand. It is a trick, but magicians are trying to get you to focus on the right thing, and misdirection is about focusing on the right thing so you could experience that wonder. And the same thing's true in our marriages, is when we focus on the right things that God's designed for our marriage, we're going to experience the wonder, the astonishment. Another chapter we talk about reading your spouse's mind.
Classic.
So we take, how does a mind reader really read minds, and take that in a relationship? How do you read your spouse's mind? So I'll give you the broad brush strokes are, the first part's all about communication, and the culmination of communication is mind-blowing sex, right? Which is chapter 6. And I think they softened it. The publishers, I think, put mind-blowing bedroom magic or something. I was like, all right, I can live with that. But
that'll work. It'll play.
So.
It's fine. That's right. There's so many questions this ran through my mind. Keep going. I'm sorry.
So That's all chapter or section 1. Thankfully, that's not all chapter 1 is on communication. Chapter 2 is overcoming, or section 2 is overcoming. And if you're married long enough, there will be something to overcome, whether it's the loss of a loved one, whether it's a loved one getting sick, whether my wife and I had a miscarriage, our third child, she's 4 months along, and it was devastating to say the least. And how do you work with two broken people that are in grief and really learn to overcome and not go, it's now me against you, and create that tension that can happen in a marriage. And so we talk about what are the strategies to overcome. And then the final section is all about thriving. Is if you already have a great marriage, how do you continue to thrive? How do you continue to date? Magicians are always doing like, how do you come over the top, or how do you create a standing ovation? And so we talk about how do you have the end in mind so you could have a great marriage and end well. So yeah.
It's so good. I can't wait to read it. Now I wish I would have read it over the weekend, but because the weekend was what it was, I'm going to ask you a question this is completely left field, and it is unscripted. So you've performed in front of millions of people. I assume as a Christian, and you share a message, you probably get emails, texts, direct messages, however, some form of media. You receive back feedback from stories and lives that have been changed. So let's start there. Is that fair to say? Have you received those kind of messages?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. How do you, and this is literally a completely unrelated question, because it was a conversation I just got off of after the weekend that I just spent. How do you, as a performer, whether you're a podcaster, a pastor, a worship leader, a Christian artist, Christian movies, whatever it might be, we all receive these feedback that, hey, this changed my life. How do you, one, carry the weight of that? Or two, do you feel the weight of those emails, messages, whatever media you get that from? And three, does it inspire you? And four, do you find days where you're just like, I don't know if I can carry this weight? And I'm sorry, this is a really difficult question, but do you understand where I'm going with that? Because you probably are someone has received those messages, whether it's someone fighting a terminal illness or someone that, you know what I mean? You've received those messages. Is that a fair question? I'm sorry. And if you say pass, we're good, and we'll move on to the next question.
No. So one is we save all of those. And we save it for a very specific reason. There's also the other side, the negative side. And it just seems like one person going like, this is the worst thing, can tail spin me, and go like, but neither of those in an ideal world should go like, oh, wow, now that made my day and I'm just going to be on cloud 9 on either side of those. Like, it shouldn't knock me into a pit or be like, this is I try to understand that people are getting a glimpse of who I am in a very small, I intentionally live life with about a dozen people. We meet weekly, we connect, and those people know everything I could share more or less, but when you're on stage, people get to know you better, but they're getting a piece of that pie. Right. So that always has to come into consideration for me with that weight, is like, but I honor it. I'll tell you what happened a day ago, 2 days ago, is after a show, somebody told me there was this young magician that would never come up to me, super shy, but he's really good. So I ended up sitting down with him for like an hour and a half after the show. And then I got a letter from him today. And so, those are things, he's just like, I really appreciate you taking the time, all that. But it's like, how do you continue to invest? Here are the things that are most valuable to me. This is one of those principles this is kind of a side thing, but in 2008, I gave away what I consider to be the most valuable thing after reading Francis Chan's Crazy Love book.
Great book.
So good. But he talked about like, what are you investing in and how do you invest in the kingdom? And I went, the most valuable thing to me that I've collected the most of are magic books. And so that day I was training 12 people around the country, from New York to Hawaii to Seattle. And I packed up all 12, or not all 12. I packed up all of my magic books. I don't know how many I had, but it's well over 100, could have been a couple hundred, and packed them into boxes. And then I put one Christian book because I knew the reverse. If I put 30 Christian books and one magic book, all the Christian books, did he pack it with this? Let me just throw those in the trash.
It's stuffing. It's all stuffing. It's like bubble wrap.
You know, if you send like the Cost of Discipleship, you know, by Bonhoeffer, Dietrich Bonhoeffer, that has a higher chance of being read if there's 20 magic books with it.
Right.
You know, so but I did the same for this kid. As I have it in my office right now. I need to send it. But is I packed up a book for him because not all of my books this time. Last time I did all my books, but this is the first time I've given away a book in a long time. But I want to invest well and know that that has a high possibility of helping to build God's kingdom and to seed plant long term, instead of me having all these books, which I use my magic books. You talk about training. Like I literally on any given day, there'll be 10 magic books around and I'm opening up and like, oh, what about that move? What about this idea? What about doing this? And so, but I don't want to be the only one with those resources. I want to give away as many resources as I can. And by God's grace, you know, other resources will come in over time.
Very cool.
I don't know if I even touched on your answer of.
Well, yeah, it's a tough question. Honestly, it's an unscripted question. It's just a conversation that I've been in recently, and maybe someday we'll have a chance somewhere to sit down and unpack that even more, because I don't think it's an answer you can give, and so maybe it wasn't even a fair question to ask. But I think it's anyone that's in ministry or in any form of ministry, whether it's, again, Christian band, a magician, a podcaster, unit worship leader, a pastor. I think that's a question that I just want to unpack with a lot of those people. Is at the end of the day, we carry the weight of a lot, because as you said, so for a pastor, and now I'm kind of on a rant, if you're a pastor standing in front of a church, you are somewhat Christ to those people, because you are the one that they go to every Sunday to hear that message. And that probably happens in the millions and millions of people you've talked to. So completely unrelated, let's move on. I have one final question for you, and that's what is next for Danny Ray Magic? Yeah,
so we have an upcoming TV special that I'm pretty excited about. It'll be our largest TV gig. I did the History Channel, but I was the stunt double for Adrian Brody.
Is that right?
Doing all the escapes. And so I was behind the scenes on that. And so this one, I'm not able to say it. I'm under an NDA right now.
Okay.
But I'm sure you could guess of the different magic shows that are out there. This, you know, is a magic reality competition. There's not too many of those. And I was able to go on to that show and perform for these two guys. And it was pretty exciting, but I have no idea when it's going to air. And so I'm just kind of waiting on that. And I get, you know, close family, friends, they're like, when's it going to air? I'm like, I'm going to tell you.
It's a magic trick. It's a sleight of hand. You don't know when it'll air. So
I'm excited about that. And we're praying through like what the opportunities that will allow us to, you know, see what that leads to.
That's very cool.
Always thankful. In the book, honestly, right now is such a huge thing for us. I'm curious to see what God's doing. You know, like I do, you know, marriage events throughout the year, but I have a feeling this is going to kind of ramp up that game, but we don't know. We're praying and asking God for wisdom on those things and seeing what he does. So,
and perfect segue. So what I want to do is, if we can, run down all the ways that people can find you, contact you, find the book. We already talked about the book and where you can get it, but let's recap all the ways. So let's start with links. What are the ways that people can find you? It may just be one link or multiple links, or TikTok, whatever it is. You list them all. What are all the ways that people can find you?
Yeah, DannyRayMagic.com is the website, and Danny Ray Magic is all the socials. So Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, Facebook, Danny Ray Magic.
There you go. Okay, so relatively easy. Next up is you have performed for millions of people. What are those events like? Because you've mentioned a few of them: potentially marriage conference, high schools. I think I saw in your video. Where do you perform? If someone's listening to this and they're interested, where do you perform?
Yeah, so we're at conferences, camps, churches. The Magic Castle is always a fun one. It's the premier magic club in the world. There's some corporate stuff we do, for businesses that will show up to do, a Christmas event or a leadership event. And then, schools, but schools are really rare. Usually, this is going to sound bad, but usually they don't have a budget to bring us out.
Right.
Like it,
100%.
so, but when we can, we'll do different schools, and so those are some of the places we end up at. But it could be leadership, it could be women's conferences, men's conferences, marriage conferences, youth conferences. We kind of end up doing the whole gambit of, from family events to specific to a conference's specialty.
And the best place, if I'm interested in that, is also the website?
Yeah, and the booking page would have how to get in touch with us. But my personal email, if anybody has questions about their marriage or myself, or maybe some way I could help you, and I check all my own email. This is my email.
That's awesome.
Danny at DannyRayMagic.com.
It might have got a little bit blurred there. Say it one more time for me.
Danny at DannyRayMagic.com.
Pretty simple, right? It's pretty simple. Okay. And the book launches, tell me one more time. It's next week, right?
November 16th. Yeah. So it's coming up quick. And so you can pre-order it now. And this is actually, you're supposed to, as an author, get like a box of, before anybody else does. Our box is lost. And so somebody came and dropped. They pre-ordered it and they're like, hey, I've got a copy of it. You want it? And so I was given a copy by a friend of mine. So I was just like, all right. Yes, I want it.
That's right. How long was that process? Just out of curiosity, how long was the process to write the book?
So 5 years was like the genesis of like, by our 25th anniversary, I want to write a book with our dealing with our marriage. But 2 years was the actual writing process.
Wow.
I was gathering ideas, like I had a bunch of notes, like I told you, I journal all the time. So I had notes on it everywhere, but really sitting down to write it was a 2-year process.
2-year process. Well, I'm going to perform a magic trick for anybody watching on video. I have one too. So I just have one just appeared right here. I don't have the box. I promise you right now, I don't have the box that's disappeared, that's missing. I just have one and I have it ready, but I promise you I will. Say that one more time.
I said that what's funny is somebody has that box, and I think it's probably one of the radio shows or TV shows we're doing this.
I promise you it's not me. I only have one. I promise. All right. So speaking of magic, what do you want to try something? Can we try something on the podcast?
Let's try it. So I'm going to ask you to help describe what's going on here, but I have 4 of these, and I'm going to switch cameras in a second, but you can tell they're ink blots that are on cards, on playing cards, right?
Right. Yep. So I'm looking at a card, and it looks like one of the, I want to say Worcester sauce, but that's not right. What do they call those? Inkblot test?
Ink blots, yeah.
We'll call it an inkblot test. I'm looking at a card that looks somewhat like a very organized inkblot test. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so what would you say that, or I'll just show you all 4 of them.
Okay.
That's hilarious. This is what's, okay, take 2. Unscripted.
That's how we roll. That's perfect. I love it. You'll have to go back and watch the video. Okay, start over. All right, we'll reboot. All right, here we go.
What would you say those 4 look like?
That one looks like a spider.
That looks like a spider. If I twist, one of the ink blots turns face down. I'll do it again. I'm going to go slowly like that. And you can see a second one turns face down. See, to me, they do look like spiders, but this kind of looks like a club there.
Oh, you're right. I didn't even see that. Yes. Yeah. Okay.
If the last one turns face down, you actually notice that they are the 4.
Come on. No, and now they're kings. Come on.
There we go.
All right. So if you're listening on the podcast, he basically just showed me 4 Worcester sauce inkblot test cards face up, and then slowly they went from 1 to 2 to 3 that were face down. That was insane. All right, literally that was nuts. So and then he snapped his fingers and they were all kings, and now the other ones are gone. So I don't know where those went. Okay,
I'm gonna try one more because of how the foreshadow happened, and I was like, okay. I've been doing these interviews back to back, and apparently I didn't reset. Remember how we talked about I shouldn't have been rehearsing new stuff. I should have been resetting. That's what I should have been doing. Okay.
It's all right. It's fine.
So here we go. I'm gonna do a picture in picture just so you can see me. This is it's all in real time.
I got you. Okay. All right. Up and down. Okay. Got you. Yep.
So here's what's going to happen is over here, you'll notice I have a prediction. I'll put my book on top of the prediction. There's nobody else in the room with me.
Okay.
You're just gonna have to trust me with that, but you'll see why in a second. Because I'm going to go through, I have a prediction. You tell me when to stop whenever you want. And you know what? Actually, think of a word, Aaron, any word you want. Don't say it.
Can it be a name or is that to be a word?
It doesn't matter.
Okay. All right. I got a name. Okay.
Okay, so as I go through, just say that name and I'll stop, or that word, you could change it, doesn't matter. I'll stop precisely at that card. Here we go.
Let me say it out loud.
Yeah.
Okay. Heather.
Heather?
Yep.
Okay, I want you to look at that card.
Okay.
Okay, now I want you to burn that card into your mind, okay? And I'm gonna try to narrow it down to a few cards that I think might be yours. Now, I don't want you to give me any hints or clues. I'm going to go through a few cards that I think might be yours, but if you see your card in here, don't like shout it out and say, that's my card, because obviously, you know, that will help me out. I'm gonna go with this card. You're giving me nothing. I feel like maybe this one. I'll go with one. Actually, I want to go with a joker too. I'll go with this one.
Okay.
Now, first of all, do you see your card in here?
I do. And there's what there's probably a dozen cards there, maybe?
Yeah, something like that. Okay, here we go. I'm going to narrow it down to one card. I believe that this is your card. Aaron, how'd I do?
Goodness sakes. Come on, man.
Wait, Aaron, look, underneath this book, I had a prediction. My prediction actually matches your card, the 9 of hearts, the giant 9H for the 9 of hearts. But here's what's weird, Aaron, is underneath this box, you saw it there the entire time, has another prediction. It says, before a word is on my tongue, you know it completely, O Lord, out of Psalm 139.
Oh my goodness. Stop it. Stop it. Oh my goodness. All right. If you're driving, you got to watch this video because this is nuts. So I can't read the first thing all that well because it's kind of, what does that first card say on it? I know what those say. What does that say?
You know it completely, O Lord, out of Psalm 139.
Come on, man. Like,
but just for those of you under the box that was sitting there the entire time had the word that Aaron was just thinking of, or the name he was thinking of in giant letters, says Heather. And we did not set this up. This is literally unscripted. And if you see Aaron's face right now, you would know.
I will make sure to splice and send this out because I'm wigged out right now. Like, honestly, the funniest part is I actually switched the word last second and yet you still, that's unbelievable, man. Seriously, I'm a little speechless, which isn't good for a podcast because we're on audio. That was nuts. All right, tell us how you did it.
That's not happening.
You can't do that. Okay. All right. That's fine. All right. And that was unbelievable. Unbelievable. I can't wait to splice and get that. I'm actually gonna put this up. I can't put it as a teaser because that would give away the whole thing. So I'll figure something out, but you have to go watch the video. And you will literally see my face. I'm shocked. We even pre-gamed and you said, you know, hey, you know, because we talked about how would this would play with audio and video, and dude, I'm in shock right now. That's pretty amazing. And my wife Heather, I'm sure will appreciate this when she's on a run listening. And if not, I'll show her the video. So you are unbelievable, man. That is unbelievable. And this has been just an incredible blessing. Unbelievable.
Thank you so much. It's been an honor to be on the show and get to know you better. And hopefully one day the four of us, I'll get my wife, Kimberly, and Heather will hopefully be able to sit down. And you're in Ohio, right?
I am in Ohio. So next time through Ohio, you absolutely have to reach out because I would love to see more of the kind of stuff. That was really cool.
Thank you.
Yeah. Oh, all right. So the book, let's roll through everything one more time. The book is called I can't make your wife disappear.
There it is. No, I can't make your wife disappear. Yep.
No, I can't. I can't say without laughing. It's so good. No, I can't make your wife disappear. But before you hang up, it is written with his wife, and so that is absolutely awesome. He's going to be on a show which is to be named later. Can't talk about it yet because there's some agreements, but he will be on TV. So look for him there. You can find you on YouTube, TikTok, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, probably.
Instagram. That's probably our
Instagram.
number one is Instagram, TikTok, Facebook. Yeah.
Those are your biggest mediums. So that's the best place to find everything.
Any of them we're on, but those are the three that we tend to get the most traction with.
There you go. And what's on TikTok? Just because I'm a TikTok guy that loses literally hours of my life on TikTok. Thank you to my two daughters. I'm sorry, say it again.
Almost all magic videos.
Okay.
So, yeah, we've tried a couple other things on there, but people just want to scroll through and go like, oh, magic, let me watch that, more than, me talking about whatever. So we've tried a few other things, but almost all magic stuff. Yeah.
Almost all magic stuff. And the two more questions. The website is
DannyRayMagic.com.
DannyRayMagic.com. And that's if you're interested in any of the things we've talked about and potentially scheduling. And then the last thing is your email contact information one more time.
Danny@DannyRayMagic.com.
And your social security number. No, I'm kidding. I don't want that. Please don't give that to me. You probably already know mine based on that card trick you just did.
Let me show it to you.
Man, this has been awesome. I wish you nothing but the best, and may God just continue to bless you in an area and a field. I think that has a negative context around it, like we talked about early on. It doesn't have to, and that's what I love is you're doing a ministry in an area that is, what I mean, like that's what we're called to, right? We're called to go out to the world, even the places where people have preconceived notions or preconceived thoughts about. We're still called to go out to those places, and man, I really appreciate that about you. And I'm still wigged out that you have Heather's name. You're the best, man. Thank you so much. I wish you nothing but the best, Dan.
Thank you so much. Have a great day.
We will talk soon. Thank you.